Welcome to the Clarinet Ninja Podcast. My name is Jay Hassler. As always, I'm doing my best to bring you the finest in clarinet information and entertainment. Today on the podcast, we have Mr. James Danderfer. Whoa, don't you know he usually plays us in? He's playing us in today with a brand new track off his brand new album. The name of the track, the name of the album is If Not Now. And James has just released this record. It is a fantastic record. You're going to be hearing bits and pieces of it through this conversation. I've left links to James down in the show notes, down in the description. They'll take you to his website. They'll take you to the records. They'll take you to every bit of information James has shared with the world. And you know what? I have left some links for me down in the show notes, down in the description. And it will tell you everything that I have shared with the world, but most particularly what I want to share with the adult clarinet players out there who are looking to up their rate of improvement on the clarinet is the Clarinet Ninja Dojo. It's a fantastic place. I would say the premier place to learn clarinet, have a great time, and make some lasting improvement, make some immediate improvements, and make some lasting improvements. Let me talk to you seriously for 10 seconds. Have you liked? Have you subscribed? Have you left a rating? A comment maybe? Something nice? If you haven't, or even if you have, consider doing it. It would do a lot to help these conversations about the clarinet just get out there in the world, and I would love that because I feel fortunate to be able to put content like this in the world, and I would love for a lot of people to see it. That's it. Have a good time. James and I talk about some cool stuff. Check it out. James Danderfer, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Jay. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thanks for being here. I mean, it's good to have you here in person after hearing you play so often at the front of the show. But speaking of that, the world gets to hear you play all over again because word on the street is that you got a new record coming out.
Yes, indeed. Yep, it's coming out September 19th. So there's a couple of singles that are available now, and the record's called If Not Now. And it was recorded last October. Yeah, that's right. In not that far from you at Rudy Van Gelder's studio.
I remember because you forgot your sunglasses at my house, and I had to drop them off at the doorman for you to pick up on the way out of town.
Yeah, that's right.
So I remember the recording of the record. Tell us, if you would, what makes Rudy Van Gelder Studio significant in the jazz world?
I mean, I guess the number one thing is how many historic or famous jazz recordings were recorded there. Rudy Van Gelder being the late, great recording engineer, who recorded Miles and Coltrane and Hank Mobley and Lee Morgan and Jackie McLean, and really just all of the greats, especially Blue Note recordings. So that's the first thing. And then the room itself is it's a beautiful room. It's a beautiful sounding room. I don't know if you could throw up a photo of it, but the wood ceiling, how it kind of goes up like a pyramid. Yeah, it's a very nice sounding room. But when you walk in, I mean, you really feel the some kind of presence there, and you look at pictures of albums and whatnot on the wall, and there's a picture of Coltrane sitting on the stairs that are, just right next to you, and they haven't really changed, which is kind of cool. So yeah, all those things make Rudy's studio very unique.
In terms of walking into this, revered space, what did you bring with you in terms of tunes? Like in terms of, we'll be playing some of the the cuts, but I'm just curious to know if you could talk to me about what this album means in terms of your trajectory, so explain a little bit like where you came from, the albums that came previously, and is there something about this album that you're bringing something that is representative of your journey as a musician?
I guess I don't really think about it in terms of journey. I think the journey is something that we only see looking back. But I just think of it as kind of a snapshot of, of my life at that particular time, so all the songs on the record, there's 10 of them, and I wrote all of them, I think. I would say the songs kind of reflect things that I'm listening to, and then aspects of life. I wrote a song for my kids, who at that point were 6 and 7 years old, and little things like that, where I think I'll look back and it will make me think of certain places and certain people.
It's funny to think about that from the artist standpoint, because that's what music does for all of us, right? I remember the first time I remember hearing Giant Steps for the first time. I know where I was, and I remember, you're probably too young for this. There was a pop artist named Howard Jones, and I can remember sitting in the back of the car with my headphones on, my parents driving me around listening to this Howard Jones album.
Yeah.
You can really place yourself when you
Uh-huh.
make music. And I'd never thought about it, since I don't write my own music. I never thought about that aspect of music from the artist side. I only thought about it from the consumer side.
I have the same experience with, some of those recordings.
Talk to me about your composing. I know your work writing like jazz tunes and like that, but I think I know the answer to this. You also write music where it's for ensembles, where you write all the notes out, right? For everybody. It's not just melodies and chord changes. But on this record, it's probably just jazz tunes, right? But I know you do other work. Can you talk to me about what you do as a composer?
Yeah. Well, I think looking at sort of my recordings, I've written for, I guess the smallest thing has been trio, clarinet, drums, and piano. And actually, a lot of the piano parts I did write out. Just not that I'm a pianist, but sometimes I write out more specific parts just because it gives the artist a clearer sense of what I'm after, especially
Right.
if they're a good reader. Other recordings, I think the largest one that I've written for was Big Band, which is a recording that the Vancouver Jazz Orchestra just recorded last summer. And, that's a 17-piece band. And in that case, yes, I'm writing out parts for all the musicians. And then beyond that, I've dabbled a little bit in film scoring, where a lot of it is within the program, such as Logic. Writing more orchestral sounding things, I definitely would not, especially in your presence, call myself a composer of orchestral music. But it's just, yeah, the film stuff has been a real wide variety of, just pop, classical, a little bit of jazz, cinematic soundscapes and all that. But I haven't been doing as much of that in the last few years. It's been more composing for medium to large ensemble, jazz ensemble. And this recording it's a 7-piece band. So this is myself, clarinet, bass clarinet, Corey Weeds on tenor saxophone, Steve Davis on trombone, Atlee King on vibraphone, and then Miki Yamanaka on piano, Tyrone Allen on bass, and Kush Abadi on drums. So that's 3 horns. And it's one of those things, Jay, where it's a jazz tune, but it's more than a lead sheet.
Right.
It does take some time to arrange and kind of consider that. So yeah, sometimes I think of myself as kind of composer with a lowercase c,
Well, that's very humble of you. I mean, I've heard you play your own compositions. I would give you a capital C. If I sounded like I was diminishing composing as like a lead sheet, I didn't mean to do that. One of the things that I've heard so many times because it was a part of my daughter's bedtime playlist is Blue Train. We used to listen to that cut off that album, and it's just funny. Like, I would go through phases where I would be singing either the trumpet part or the trombone part, rather than, like I would be singing the harmonies in it just for fun because when you're putting someone to sleep every night for 2 years, you got to sing along with something other than the top notes, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting how much impact. Like I never thought about it when I first heard it, but the impact of the arrangement part of that is really, really huge for me. The first time it's all in unison, the second time it goes into the chords. It does shape the experience of hearing the music for sure. And I'd never actually thought about it consciously until this. So thank you. In terms of bass clarinet divisions, how much bass clarinet are we going to hear on this record and how much clarinet? And the bass clarinet has been something I've been slightly aware of because we're friends, like of you bringing into what it is that you've done, had conversations about bass clarinets and whatnot. But can you tell us like how long it's been that you've been working to bring the bass clarinet into part of what makes your music like sound, what makes it you? Like how long have you been doing that? And how do you decide what pieces go on bass clarinet, what pieces go on clarinet?
Well, it's going to be about half the record is clarinet and the other half bass clarinet. And I think there are some pieces that, as you know, clarinet and bass clarinet, yes, they are in the clarinet family, but they have very different characters. So when I'm looking at a piece, sometimes I have an idea of which instrument it's going to be, but often I'll just kind of play through it on both and see which one feels more suited to that song. And it's actually been a lot more challenging than I expected.
Are you willing to share what those challenges were?
Well, yeah, and still are. I mean, when I think of bass clarinet, I just find that the voicing is not quite the same as clarinet, and just even individual notes are just there's a greater difference in terms of resistance, from one note to the next.
Right.
And I feel like the bass clarinet has not gotten sort of the treatment like the clarinet has. I feel like the clarinet's really dialed in. It's a soloist instrument as well as an ensemble instrument, whereas bass clarinet has been mostly an ensemble instrument. And I just don't feel like it's totally dialed in.
think I get what you're saying because, like, the clarinet's had an interesting trajectory in jazz, right? Because it used to be a featured instrument, like
Hmm.
band leaders played the clarinet, and then in the advent of bebop and the challenges of the clarinet made it not an attractive instrument for bebop, except for just a very few people. And what I feel like I'm seeing now is the clarinet becoming more of something that's a mainstream jazz instrument in a certain sense. In like, how does clarinet fit into the modern jazz sound? I mean, we have people that are doing it now, that yourself included. It doesn't have the post 1950 history that the saxophone does, but it's still coming into a thing, and there's still a way that we attach it to what we know. The bass clarinet's like a real free agent, right? I mean, like we don't have we. I think it's coming. I think it's happening. That there's more people playing jazz bass clarinet, but pretty much if you ask someone to name a jazz bass clarinet player, they're just going to say Eric Dolphy. Done. And nobody really sounds like Dolphy, nor should they. I mean, he was a singular type of player. I mean, who wants to copy that necessarily? I mean, because it's such a specific voice. I mean, I mean, who wants to copy it? It's great. Who wouldn't want to copy it? But if you're trying to be your own person, it would be hard to copy. And so, like when I hear you play the bass clarinet, I hear an instrument that the way you do it is different than the way my another podcast guest Todd Marcus has done it. It sounds different than when my friend Ron Odrich does it. I mean, everybody sounds different playing the bass clarinet, and it's not to me attached to a tradition. You guys are all bringing something that is either whoever you learn jazz vocabulary from, whatever became you, is expressed simply on the bass clarinet. But it's not. It doesn't feel like there's as many similarities to draw from player to player, which I don't know if that even makes any sense. But like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
what's interesting to me is a lot of the people that I think are great jazz clarinet players are also pretty good or used to be pretty good or studied classical clarinet, right?
Mm.
But most of the people, I don't, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm just kind of assuming you never like studied classical bass clarinet and how to fit into an orchestra and took lessons in that way. And I don't think most of the bass clarinet players I hear that are playing jazz, they did that potentially early on in their life, in their education with the clarinet, but not with the bass clarinet. And
Mhm.
the other thing that I like is that a lot of clarinet players are now playing bass clarinet, playing jazz bass clarinet, or more so. Maybe not a lot, that's an exaggeration. But it's not necessarily people coming from the saxophone that have adopted the instrument because like unless somebody has done a lot of work, and I know, and one of my very good friends who might listen to this podcast has done that work, so I don't want to dismiss that. I mean, there's one singular person that I'm thinking of when I say that, but someone coming from a saxophone background playing bass clarinet is different than someone coming from a clarinet background playing bass clarinet.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to me to sort of be able to hear you on the same gig go back and forth between clarinet and bass clarinet. Somebody playing the bass clarinet isn't so much featured as it is you playing the bass clarinet, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then I think that that's something that even hearing Dolphy, his presence is so strong as an artist, but you're still it's the bass clarinet really stands out. Like, well, that's a weird thing to do.
Mhm.
Like when he's playing alto, he's still playing the same stuff, but it doesn't sound quite as weird because he's playing an instrument we all know so well. But
Yeah.
the bass clarinet's, I think only coming into its own now as a jazz instrument from an improvisational standpoint.
Mhm.
I've talked way
Yeah.
too long. This podcast is about you. Not necessarily how long could it have taken you, but how long was this album in sort of production from the idea of production, meaning like starting to write the tunes and having the idea and the committing to doing the album in your head? Like, how long is that process? I have no idea what that is like.
Well, if I can, I just want to loop back because you
Sure.
said a lot of things that I that resonate with me, and I think it's interesting when you talk about the bass clarinet there being a free agent. I love that. It's and there is I feel this I've always felt this way with the clarinet as well, at least in the modern context, is that it's a little unusual. You don't have that many references in the modern context for jazz clarinet and certainly bass clarinet. And there's some freedom in that, which I've always enjoyed. By comparison, when I play the saxophone, it's hard for me not to hear all of these other voices, of Joe Henderson and Stan Getz, Cannibal Adderley, and Phil Woods, Bird. And when I play clarinet, it kind of feels like, oh no, I'm just doing my own thing. I'm just,
It's yeah.
which obviously it's not my own thing. It comes from, all the greats that I've listened to, especially saxophone players and trumpet players, and I'm kind of taking that information and channeling it through this instrument. But just for the simple fact that there are fewer reference points, it just kind of feels like it feels freeing. So free agent. There we go. Maybe that's the next album title.
Well, listen, nothing would give me more joy than to have accidentally titled an album for you. I mean, that would be, I'd be talking about that all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd never shut up about it.
But to get back to the difference between the two, I think you're right. I definitely have a fair amount of experience studying classical on clarinet. I don't have that experience on the bass clarinet. I find it so hard, even just in the last 10 years, finding enough time for all the instruments. The bass clarinet is kind of the thing that it's just kind of, it's fun. I love that it's a different character that I can bring to a performance. But it's still in the same world as the clarinet. So those two things, those two voices, they complement each other nicely, but it doesn't yet feel as easy for me as the clarinet. It's been 10 years or whatever of devoting some time to it, a little bit, over those 10 years. But yeah, it still feels like there's a long ways to go there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that your clarinet playing feels more natural since you've been studying it very, very
Yeah.
strictly. I mean, not strictly, but very, very hard for a long time. Because, you went to Interlochen High School for the Arts. Was that what they call it? Interlochen Arts Academy? What's the name of it?
Yeah, Interlochen Arts Academy, or no, it's something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can say something that most renowned jazz clarinet players can't say, that you studied with Richard Hawkins.
Yes.
And I don't think his list of jazz clarinet players of his students is very long. I would imagine. I'm just guessing. And it's a tribute to his teaching, right? That he can teach you to play the clarinet, and then allow you to take what you learned from him on the clarinet and then make absolutely whatever you want to do, which is the goal of everybody teaching, right? Which is,
Mm-hmm.
how do you find your way on this instrument and not necessarily have to do exactly what your teacher does? And
Mm-hmm.
you're an extreme version of that. And I think that's a tribute to you and to him.
Yeah, Richard Hawkins, I have to say, is, in terms of how to play the instrument, one of my greatest influences. And he totally changed my perception of kind of the ideal, uh, in terms of just playing the instrument well and playing it effortlessly. And that was really the thing that I was just so struck by with hearing him play. It seemed so easy. Prior to that, the clarinetists that I had studied with were fantastic, but it wasn't that effortless level of mastery. Hearing him and seeing him play was really just changed my perception of how to approach the instrument. And then, of course, getting to study with him and getting into the, finer points, was great. Such a generous, fun soul.
I
Yeah.
don't, I've never met him, so I don't,
Oh,
I see he's on my list of people that if I see him in a room, I'm going to walk up and introduce myself, but I've never gotten the chance to do it. There's a conversation you and I had, I don't know how long ago it was. Probably longer than we've known each other for a long time now, right? I mean, 15 years.
mhm.
And we were talking, I don't know whether it was on the phone or in person, and I was talking about the idea of playing relaxed. And I don't know if you remember this conversation or this is maybe what you would normally say. You said, I don't think of it as relaxed. I think of it as playing in a way that feels natural.
Mm.
That was actually just a vocabulary word that changed a lot of how I think about how I play and how I teach. And it was one of those moments where I thought, that's on, James is on something. So I wrote on I would have notes that meant a lot to me, and I would write them on a piece of paper and tape them to my music stand so that when I would be moving the music, I would be remembered of that. And that was on my music stand for about 7, 8 years.
Oh, wow. I'm honored. I don't remember that conversation.
But it was very powerful, and it sounds like it came. You're using a lot of the related words and talking about Richard Hawkins and how he taught and what you took from it.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't talked with Richard in a while, but I've been playing his mouthpieces almost exclusively for, I mean, since then,
Yeah.
since that point, and now I'm playing, because he's collaborating with Bakun, and Bakun is in my hometown of Vancouver, so I'm playing one of his mouthpieces now as well. Uh, by the way, also at Interlochen, speaking of great masters of the clarinet, was a very young Anthony McGill. And
I remember that. Thanks. I do remember. Like one time you were in town, you're like, let's go hear Anthony McGill play the Brahms quintet or the Mozart quintet. I can't remember which great piece it was. Knowing you as like a jazz guy, of course I pigeonholed you and like, why would you know Anthony McGill? And I kind of I know him better now than I did then. I'm like, why does this guy know Anthony McGill better than me? But you got his tickets, and so I totally I totally got over myself. When we went to that place, it was a beautiful room, right? We couldn't really see him, but it sounded so amazing. And then we got to talk to him afterwards. It was super fun.
looping it back to the recording uh, that I did last year, I like to listen to great classical players pretty regularly, when I'm practicing, to try and get into that sound, that sort of that nice round ringing tone. And so at the recording session at Rudy Van Gelder's, I had Anthony's one of his albums on my phone just at the ready, and I would just I'd listen to it, and I'd just try to copy just a few notes, just to kind of get back to that ringing sound. And yeah, I haven't talked to Anthony in a while, but I love his approach, his sound, the warmth, the vibrancy of it.
Like when I hear him play, I don't. It's almost like he's not blowing. Like it's like it's just like kind of coming out. It's completely unforced. I don't feel like he's pushing it towards me. I feel like it wants to come to me. Like it's
Mhm.
everything just sounds completely without any resistance at all. Even though I mean, obviously we know as a clarinet player, in order to make that sound, there's a lot of effort that and attention and that goes into it. But yeah, no, I agree. I heard him play a couple years ago at this church on 96th Street, and it was a free concert, right? And so we go into the free concert, but it was a free because I'm me and I don't read things. It was a free ticket concert that you should get tickets to, right? The tickets were free, but you should sign up for them. And I didn't sign up for them, and so I'm standing out there in the rain, and I was like the last person let in, and I had the worst seat in the house. I was like way at the back, and upstairs. It seriously sounded like he was sitting next to me playing the clarinet. That the sound just sort of permeated everything. Like it was an amazing thing. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The time of that ringing sound, um,
Mhm.
and I think he's a great example of it. And he makes it
Mhm.
seem so easy. Really pisses me off. When you were studying with Richard Hawkins, did you already know what you wanted to do with the clarinet, or were you learning clarinet and you didn't know you were going to like focus your life on jazz music?
I was studying saxophone and clarinet. I was studying saxophone with Bill Sears. Uh, Also, just an amazing experience to study with Bill. Even at that point, I knew that clarinet was kind of more me, if I could just say that. Just felt more like my voice than saxophone. I also just found I wasn't quite as comfortable in the jazz context on clarinet, for reasons that you kind of alluded to already, but we could talk more about. So I wasn't sure, yeah, how to find my way in that kind of music. But at the same time, I knew there was something there because it just kind of, yeah, when I played the clarinet, especially improvising, just felt like, yeah, just felt like my voice. And I was already way into Eddie Daniels at that point. And then, as it turns out, Richard and Eddie are tight. I mean, they like Richard was just, when I was studying with him, like when I started, I think he had just spent a couple of weeks at Eddie's place in New Mexico, just hanging out, making mouthpieces. It's such a great coincidence because then I got to understand a little bit more about Eddie and his approach through Richard. And I even got to talk to Eddie on the phone once or twice. This is a very roundabout way of answering your question. I had a sense at that time that clarinet was kind of the way for me, but I didn't know exactly how to do it.
But well, there isn't quite the blueprint for it, right? I mean, like I feel like people that learn jazz saxophone, there's a way to learn the saxophone and jazz together. A lot of people have done it. Like the number of people that have come to it that same process, but switch the word saxophone for clarinet, the pieces don't fit exactly right because they haven't been honed quite enough yet. But which kind of leads to a question for me. Like when you were learning jazz on the clarinet, I think you kind of already answered this, but just for the people that are listening, I feel like people that want to play the jazz clarinet are either clarinetists who don't play jazz or saxophonists that want to learn the clarinet. And I want to use your experience, and I want you to tell us what you can think of. I'm kind of ambushing you with this question. A clarinetist who, plays clarinet but never really played jazz. What are some first steps to becoming a jazz clarinet player? And then, after you get done answering that, would you please answer a saxophonist who's a jazz saxophonist? How should they? What's the first one or two steps they should take into learning jazz clarinet?
Wow. Okay. I've actually talked to Anthony McGill about this years ago because he wanted to get more into jazz and improvising. The first thing is you have to listen to the music, find jazz artists that you really love, ideally on your instrument, so that you can kind of get a concept for the sound, and just a lot of listening, and then a lot of copying. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to transcribe a whole solo, but just phrases, a couple bars here and there, and just play along and try to get the feel of it. Because, I mean, if you take someone, for example, Anthony, you couldn't find a better clarinetist, so that's not a problem. It's just the feel. Classical players tend to think of swing as being more extreme than it is. I mean, you kind of live on both sides of the fence.
A little bit, yeah.
Grass is always green, right?
Sometimes they don't even have grass.
Yeah, so classical players tend to kind of play with a heavier swing feel that and more exaggerated scoops and stuff. But if you really copy the feel of even just one phrase, that makes all the difference. That separates you from someone who's heard jazz and thinks it's fun to someone who's understands the feel more.
Would it be fair to say that the feel is more elusive than the actual tone of the clarinet? The tone of the clarinet can be a lot of things in jazz because there's not that much. I mean, people are coming to it from their own way. It's like, a saxophone player, if you haven't heard a lot of, Cannonball and Bird, you got to get that. And you have to at least have a connection to that, even if it's a rejection of it. It has to be a part of something that you know. But on the clarinet, a lot of sounds are fine. The lineage has been fractured from a long time ago, so everyone's coming to it their own way. But I agree with you that the feel is very, very hard to get, and the time feel is hard to get. But you're right, the clarinet playing is not a problem, right? It's not a clarinet playing thing, right? It's just how is it that you're feeling the beat? It's like you're speaking a different dialect of the same language, right? It's not a completely different language. I guess one could argue that it is, but in my head, it's a different accent for sure, like literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
What about a saxophone player that wants to play jazz clarinet and is trying to work their way around the instrument? Because saxophone players have a hard time with the overblowing of the 12th, right? So is that something that you remember? I mean, I guess you kind of alluded to it, right? Where like you felt less comfortable playing jazz on the clarinet, when you were at Interlochen, and I would imagine it's kind of for the same reason. It's like the muscle memory doesn't translate to two octaves immediately, which is frustrating when you're learning it, right? On the saxophone, Yeah, if the saxophone, if you learn a pattern, it works in a lot of, it works in at least two registers, right? On the clarinet, it's three.
Actually, the reason that it was felt a little more challenging to play jazz on the clarinet wasn't for that reason, because I started on the clarinet, saxophone came later, so the 12th was felt pretty natural. It's more about the volume, which, when you're playing with a drummer and they're playing sticks on a cymbal, that takes up the same sonic space as the clarinet. So that's why, like a lot of classic recordings where the clarinet is featured, drums come right down. They're either on brushes or they're playing toms or something. So they're not taking up the same space. So that's why it felt more difficult to play jazz on the clarinet, because I'd work on stuff in the practice room and, I thought it was sounding kind of nice. And then I'd play with a band, and it took me a long time to figure out what it was, but I just feel so uncomfortable because I was having to blow so hard, and the tone was then compressed, and it just wasn't the soft kind of warm sound that I kind of gravitate to. So that's the reason why, more than, the just playing the instrument itself. It's just the volume change is why I believe clarinet kind of stopped the bebop era. That's at that point in 1940s. That's the break, right? They're just, there's a couple, that kind of persevered and found their way, but yeah, just the volume.
That really checks out. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I've been in a relatively small room with Eddie Daniels playing. I think he was unmiked. He was a performance, so he didn't. It didn't not strike me he was playing very loud. Like it seemed like he was playing a very reasonable volume. And
Mhm.
the other person who I have been in the room quite a bit with for lessons was Gary Foster. I mean, we know him as an alto player, but he's a very, very fine jazz clarinet player. And his clarinet tone was that I would use the same words as to describe Anthony McGill. It was a little brighter than Anthony McGill, but it was unforced. Like
Mhm.
he was not pressing, and that was one of the things that in my brief unsuccessful jazz career, one of the things that I got frustrated with the clarinet was my playing. I was forcing so much stuff, and I didn't really realize it was to be heard, or the perception that I was going to be heard. I was playing so much harder. My fingers were harder. Everything was much more tense, and I wasn't playing the clarinet very well.
Mhm.
In retrospect, I don't think I could self-identify that at the time, but
Yeah.
looking back on it, that was definitely happening. That's
Yeah.
that's not what stopped my jazz career. It was my notes aren't so good, but but that was definitely happening too. Can you give us a couple ideas, looking at it as someone that knows the saxophone quite well and the clarinet quite well? What would be the most beneficial thing somebody could do who's a pretty good saxophone player, maybe a very good saxophone player who doesn't have much experience with the clarinet, but wants to bring it into their sound, into what it is that they offer the world musically?
What I find interesting over the years is seeing really good saxophonists play the clarinet. And if they're really good on the saxophone, it's interesting to hear the approach to clarinet. Like they can actually get around it pretty well, but it doesn't really sound like a clarinet. When saxophone players come to me asking for kind of just a one intro to the clarinet lesson, it's usually because they want to go a little deeper than that. They actually want to understand the instrument better. And the first thing I suggest is listening to classical clarinetists to get a sound concept. You know, the kind of the warm, ringing, round tone that we've talked about today. If they listen to it enough, as we know, if you kind of know what it sounds like, your body will figure out how to get that sound, or at least it'll make a big difference. So the first thing is listening. The second thing, just get into brass tacks and explain, like the main difference is your voicing, the tongue position and the soft palate. Like the back of the tongue is up, the soft palate is up. You're thinking E instead of ah or O, and that's where we then get into the 12th starting on low C. Okay, they can play the 12th up to G, it's fine. And then D up to A is a little less fine. And then, E to B is a mess, and F to C is impossible. So we talk about, yeah, I talk about that being the main key difference in order for them to play the instrument like one instrument, right? And not have a different approach for the high notes and stay relaxed, but also to get that ringing tone. And then the last thing is touch, of just getting them to play a really slow scale. And this is what the one lesson I had with Eddie Daniels, this is all we worked on. Just really slow scales and just getting a touch for the instrument. Those are the three things.
That puts really good words to the challenge. But then I think your ideas about how to do it are amazing. You did a very good job. I should and I will steal some of your vocabulary because you talked about what's at the core of the Clarinet Ninja Dojo program. By the way, if you're an adult clarinet player that wants to learn more about the clarinet and up your playing, please consider checking out the Clarinet Ninja Dojo. Links in the description. But yeah, but exactly right. Playing the instrument so that those 12ths are voiced so that it's going to give you all the advantages that you can have because the clarinet's going to be uneven no matter what you do, much more so than the saxophone. And if you play in a way that accentuates those, you're really not playing the clarinet. I mean, you're making sound on the clarinet, you are in some way playing the clarinet, but you're not actually playing it in that same way that you would play the saxophone. But I found that saxophone players really understand how to practice voicing and overtones very effectively, and they can make that change very, very quickly. But again, it's pinned on listening, right? Of knowing what sound that you want. I mean, I think that I think you solved a lot of problems here, James. I think you a lot of challenges, challenges met one after the other.
Yeah, that's right.
And the touch is also interesting too, right? Because like there is a way that really fine clarinet playing is, and that's one of the things that left in my jazz playing when I was playing too hard is my touch became very, very, very heavy. And
Yeah.
so then all of a sudden I'm not, as somebody who's primarily a clarinet player, I'm not playing the clarinet very well, and that's very, very frustrating. Let's get really nerdy for just one second. What might you see? Well, you're playing on a Bakun Hawkins. What's the name? What model are you playing on right now?
It's the Corrado model. So it's a little more open, but within the classical realm.
Right,
And it's designed by Richard, but it's made by Bakun.
and that is is that the mouthpiece you're playing on the record that we get to hear?
Yes, it is.
And what reeds are you playing on now?
I'm playing on 2.75 Legère. I want to say French cut, but maybe it's the European cut. It's one of those.
I love that in the world of complete neurotic behavior, you're unsure what reed you play on. I think it's beautiful. I think it's amazing. And listen, I know that you could probably reach somewhere and figure it out for us, but don't. Right? It's better that we don't know.
A little mystery.
Maybe it's better that you don't know. But so you've been playing Legères for a while, if I'm remembering right.
Long time.
Yeah. Did you start back when they had the Quebec and the?
I started at the beginning because of Richard Hawkins.
Oh, okay.
He was the one who hit me to them. And this would have been, oh, Jay, like very early on. I don't think they even had multiple models
Okay.
or types. Yeah, I think I've been playing them for all my recordings.
Well, I mean, I will say just, and I say this in fun, given you can't remember what reed you play on, I'm not sure you're a reliable narrator for what reeds you played on recordings from years ago.
Yeah, right.
Is that fair?
That's fair. That's fair. But I can tell you that it's been mostly Legère reeds on the clarinet. We've talked about this in years past. You know, when I've kind of gone back to Kane and for periods of time. But yeah, Legere's really pleased with what they've done.
I feel like I'm the opposite of you, where like the amount of time you've played Kane is probably the amount of time I've played Legere, right?
Uh-huh.
It's been a couple years here and there where I've played them, and I think they're really good. The Kane reed versus synthetic reed conversation is very polarizing, and I don't have
Huh.
polarized feelings about it. Like I feel like yeah, both ways are good, which is not very much fun really in terms of a debate standpoint. I switched to Legere's for the third time during the pandemic because I
Uh-huh.
decided, I just want to leave my clarinet on the stand. Since we're not leaving the house, so I'm just going to leave my clarinet. The particular clarinet, just to say, that I left together was a green line. So it was, whatever.
Mm.
So I could just pick it up and play it whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't have to get any reeds wet. I could just, because my kiddo was really young then, probably for you too, right? I mean, like your kids are in the age where they were babies during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like it was very difficult to find any time to do anything. And if I had to
Uh-huh.
get a reed wet, that's just time I wasn't playing the clarinet. And I sometimes only had like 5 minutes, right? So that's what I'm
Yeah.
going to play. There's something about a cane reed that I just feel really happy playing on it,
Mhm.
even though I'm simultaneously very frustrated by how uneven it might be, or what I have to do to it, or you know how much time I got to take to make them work. When it's not the pandemic, I've got time, which is an odd statement, right? Because the pandemic, we had nothing but time, but not necessarily time for that. And
Yeah.
well, I've always gravitated towards Van Doren V12.
Mhm.
That's what I always end up playing. I will go for 5 or 6 months and not play them, but then every time I go back, it's like a bell rings in my head when I the first time I play it. I'm like, oh my God, no, yeah, no, this is it. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you have the same relationship with Legere.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I enjoy playing a really nicely balanced, perfectly aged V12. That's also very nice. However, I don't have time to keep up with all my reeds because I'm playing, regularly alto sax, tenor sax, soprano sax, clarinet, bass clarinet. In those periods where I've gone back to Kane, I don't have any time to practice. I'm only working on reeds, especially when, with that many instruments and all the reeds are changing, you have to stay on top of them, and it's just too much. The conversation of Kane versus synthetic, you're right, it is polarizing. What I would like to say and what I do say to my students is that it's an investment. If you get into synthetics, it's an investment financially, but you are saving so much time. And the reason it's an investment financially is because, at least for me, and I think for you too, the surprising thing about synthetics, Legères in this case, is that they're not the same. From one to the next, they can actually be pretty different. If sometimes I'll get five 2.75, same model, and they're all different. You could argue that then you actually get more types of reed to try out, and you can find the one that really works for you, or you can find two. If you get 10, you'll probably find that six of them are usable and two of them are just bang on. Uh, well, then you're set for a year.
Yeah.
So It's the people who try a synthetic and they say, yeah, I tried it. It was difficult. It was too hard or whatever. And then they stop. I get it, but you just didn't invest enough to really do your research and find what works for you.
I was always disappointed because I'm a little too lazy to do it right, So I just maybe I don't know what's right. I would find one that really worked, and then I would just play that one. And I would have other ones just in case I did something stupid with that one and broke it or bent it or did something. But then when it was time to get like a new main read, I misjudged the amount of lead time I would need for that because I would end up without anything that really worked for a while. And that was disappointing because my inherent bias was that these reads should all be the same.
Hmm.
And why wouldn't they be the same? Like we're trying to solve that, right? That's the
Yeah.
problem. We're trying to solve it.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer for clarinet. What kind of clarinet do you play on?
It's a Selmer Privilege,
And then what about the bass?
also a Selmer
And
Privilege.
is that a low E flat or a low C
It's E flat.
flat? And
Yeah.
what mouthpiece are you using on that?
That's Van Doren uh, B20.
I
Is
don't know
that
if
a
it's,
thing?
there's a B50 that might be good.
Uh, B40.
B40, okay.
Yeah, Van Doren B40.
You mean like a B20 is only half of that mouthpiece.
Yeah, that's right. If you can't afford the B40, you just do it in installments. You get
Well, you'll get the
B20.
rest of it later.
Get yourself a B20.
Jay,
Yeah,
I love the fact that you are unsure what your equipment is because I feel like that's something that like I know like my own birthday, like what it is that I'm playing. I know exactly what it is, and I love the idea that somebody can play the way that you play and not be that beholden to it. I mean, I think I think it's a healthy position that you hold there.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm becoming more and more forgetful with every year.
So now this new record, let's get back to this before we go. So this new record's coming out. You said the 19th of September?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So I can almost guarantee this isn't going to be out by then, but it'll be out soon after that. And so this record is available for listening or for purchase. How and where and why and what? Tell me everything I need to know.
It's going to be available, yeah, streaming as with most albums. Yeah, streaming everywhere, um, and available for purchase. You can get a hard copy from me if you go to my website or just my email address. It's just my name. Um, yeah, but as with most people now, it's streaming is king.
This is a part of the music world I don't know anything about. Like it could be that nobody even makes a CD anymore. Like that's an obsolete product. Does anyone
Right.
actually make an actual CD, or are people ever hoping to sell their music? Is that a dead thing? That idea of actually personally having access to music that's not streaming?
I would have said that that's gone,
Uh,
completely gone. However, I'm recording this album is for a label called Cellar Records, which is run by my very good friend Corey Weeds, and they pretty much always produce X number of CDs. Part of that is just simply for radio play. Again, this all sounds really dated, but but it's still a thing, streaming channels and radio play. So CDs are still required for that.
right.
And then people are still purchasing CDs, not like they were, but um, yeah, I think a lot of people, I shouldn't say people, but a lot of people would like something tangible. The liner notes are in there, photos are in there, the credits, you can see the title and, who wrote it. And if you kind of want to nerd out about it, you can see who engineered the session and all that stuff. So yeah, it's still a thing. The record that I put out previous to this called All the Flowers, I didn't have CDs printed. I liked that there was no waste.
Right.
However, when I look back, it almost feel like that album wasn't released because I don't have anything to hold, you
Right.
know.
No, I get that. I get that.
So anyways, yeah, I've got a box of them now, and I think people still like, again, some people like having a physical thing to take away from a show. Most people will just listen to it streaming, and either is fine by me. I'm thrilled when I find that people are, listening to my music and enjoying it. That means a lot.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good thing to remind everybody, including myself, right? Which is that any of us that make anything, the closest I have is like making a podcast or making a YouTube video or doing something like that. But so, yeah, I think the same thing, I'm sure, when you make music, anybody walks up to you and says, I love the thing that you did. That always feels amazing, right? Like, oh my God,
Mhm.
somebody actually likes the thing that I made. Like it feels good to be a positive part of somebody's life in a way that it meant a lot to me when I made it, and I'm glad it meant something to you when you received it, whenever that was.
Mhm.
But I do
Yeah.
love that people have found it and it's helped them or entertained them or done something. And I would imagine it's the same thing if I saw David Murray on the subway train one day.
Oh, really?
And I don't think David Murray, for those that don't know, David Murray is a tenor saxophone player who's a little bit avant-garde, not a household name, even in the jazz world necessarily. He's a bit of a specific thing. I saw him on the train. He looked very tired. And I said, excuse me. He had a saxophone. I knew it was David Murray. I said, I think you're David Murray. Is that right? And he goes, yeah. I said, I just want you to know how much I loved your album Morning Song, and particularly that tune. I've listened to it thousands of times, and it means a lot to me. And I could tell, like he just traveled internationally, but he actually perked up for a second and said, "Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me." Because like I met somebody famous, and I was very happy to say, "I love what you did." And
Mhm.
I would imagine, you tell me, does that ever get old if somebody walks up to you on the street and says, "Hey, you're James Danderfer. I love your clarinet playing." Who would not like that, right? I mean, so just to say to anybody, if you see anybody that you like what they've done, including me and probably James, go ahead and say it out loud. Because it never feels bad. That's for sure.
It never feels bad. No, it feels because most of the time you feel like you're just kind of throwing time, energy, and emotion into the void to find out that, you know, it meant something to someone. Yeah, that
No,
means a lot.
it's nice. All right, man.
Mhm.
Well, thanks for being here. It's good to see you.
Jay, thank you. And if I may, just on that note, say how much I appreciate what you've been doing the last few years with this thing that you've built, this channel, all the information. I love that you do a deep dive on things. Um, you think about them deeply, and you're an excellent communicator. And I also feel maybe part of what makes you an excellent teacher and communicator, because I think maybe like me, clarinet did not come easily to you. It wasn't just like it wasn't just happening,
Up
you
to
know.
a certain point, it did, and then it got hard.
Oh, okay.
I immediately went from not being able to play in fourth grade to being really, really good by 11th grade,
Yeah.
and it was like gears grinding against each other to get better than that.
Uh-huh.
I had to work really, really hard from that point forward.
Yes.
But the ascent to what I did in 11th grade, 12th grade, super easy.
Interesting. Interesting.
But yeah,
But
yeah,
you have the experience of years of just grinding, right?
yeah,
To
sure.
play the instrument. And because of that, I mean, I know that you've thought about all this stuff in great detail, and so to have someone putting these things together, so what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I'll just go with skillfully. I love it. Thank you. I
Thank you.
direct a lot of students to your channel. Um, if they're saxophone players, especially because I teach a lot of saxophone players, when they ask about clarinet, I'll say, okay, well, listen to these people and make sure you check out Clarinet Ninja, like to understand the instrument better. And there's a couple, maybe two other people online that I I point them towards. But thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And the kind words mean a lot, and the support means a lot, because, every view counts. It does. Listen, man, thank you so much. And every bit of information about you, your records, ways to get in touch with you, ways to hear your music will be all in the show notes, the description, everywhere. Hopefully, this podcast will grow so much that you'll come back and talk about another record, or we can shoot the breeze about the clarinet or anything else. So, because I'm the only host of the podcast, so I do need episodes with a co-host, and I'm considering you.
Woo! All right. Yeah. Next time we
man.
can talk about pitch, right? Because last time we don't have time for it today, but last time we got together in person, I was kind of struggling on some pitch things. You hooked me up with some really good advice. So
I want to hear about that. I'm going to click us off so that the rest of the world doesn't have to hear us talk about stuff. But well, you'll be back soon. And this is the gentleman that plays us off almost every episode. This you actually literally count us off. That's my favorite part of the episode, is your voice counting us off, man. All right, man, I'll see you next time.
all right. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Mr. James Danderfer. Those words that you said at the end meant a lot to me. I've got so much respect for you, and the fact that you would come on this podcast to have this conversation with me and say nice things, it's too much, man. Love you. All right, so check the album out. Go to the links, like, subscribe, check my stuff out. Check out the dojo if you're an adult clarinet player. I love you, I love you, I love you. I will see you next time on the podcast.